minute.
No.
Hi, everybody. This is Grace Bubeck, and we're here today with Pernilla Lillarose. And hi, Pernilla.
Hi, Grace. Hi, everyone.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about self-love. And I'm just going to share a little funny anecdote with you. We just had our pre-conversation chat, and sorry, I'm just going to have to close a window here. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so here I am back. I'm sorry. So here's a little anecdote about self-love. I said to Pernilla, I haven't prepared your bio to read out, and my eyes are just not good enough to read it out from the website. So Pernilla says, I don't see all that well either, but because I don't want to wear glasses, and I don't want to wear glasses either. So that's our little self-love today. There's some personality things that just are like that. Like we both have our little preferences in terms of how we appear on screen. So and it's good to laugh about it, and it's totally okay. Yeah. So let me introduce Pernilla to you. Pernilla is a coach and a Hakomi practitioner, and she's written a beautiful little book called Imagine Being Kind to Yourself, which is actually quite an interesting book. It's a book that you read, and at the same time it gives you access to a website with all kinds of exercises that you can do, and audios and stuff. So it's very interactive. Maybe Pernilla can tell you a little bit more about that later on. And so Pernilla is also a radio host. She has a show called Unveiled that broadcasts weekly, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, welcome, Pernilla. I'm very happy to speak to you about self-love today. And I was wondering whether we could start with your own story, because it's quite striking, and clearly it motivated that topic, like an immersion in that topic for you. So maybe you could just start by sharing that with us. And I think a lot of people who are watching probably don't know you yet, so it'd be wonderful if you could share that with us.
Great. Thank you, Grace, and thank you for having me here. I'm actually really touched by this, being here with you and sharing this conversation. And I know we share that subject, both of us, knowing that there is something really important about learning to love yourself when you really want to embody what you realize and wake up to that you are. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I just enjoy sharing that subject. It's part of what I do, what I share, but it's you can't really avoid it. A lot of people try and push that aside. You wake up and then you realize, or you may realize that, that doesn't matter. Has never been my experience, actually the opposite of it. So if I'm going to start just sharing a little bit about how it kind of started for me was that I read a book by a man called Joel Goldsmith, and this is a long time ago by now. I can't remember. I think in the late 80s, and and this book came to me in a very, very bizarre way. I'll just briefly go over that. Just I was in New Zealand doing something called woofing, working weekends on organic farms, and I did that for 7 months. So, and there was one of the farms I was on. The man who owned the farm, he was an alchemist, and he basically turned annual plants into perennials, and he did a lot of very unusual things. And you know, I was there for a while, and he took a liking to me, and I was gonna do some more experiments about that when I came back to Denmark, which is where I lived at that time. And I was studying agriculture at the university, so it was kind of the things I was involved in. And but I came back to Denmark and things changed. So or no, I didn't email him in those days. I wrote him a letter and said, you know, I'm not coming back. I'm going to do, you know, other things here. I want to start working more with people. And so, and then there was another woofer at his place, and the man Clive who owned the ranch, he told this new woofer that I was not going to come back. And for whatever reason, this woofer, I think his name was John, as far as I remember. I wish I had saved the letter, but I didn't. So he wrote me and said, you know, I hear you're not coming back. And I've been meditating on this, and I think it's really important you come back because you need to help raise the Christ consciousness here in New Zealand. Wow, that took, I mean, that I got so upset with this man, and I wrote him back. Well, I don't, I said, who are you and who are you to say that, you know, and because I was just an ordinary girl, you know, which I still am. So, and then he wrote me back. I keep wanting to say email. So he wrote me back and he said, well, there's a lot of fire under your roof. And then he said, I want to suggest that you read this book called Practicing the Presence by Joel Goldsmith. And, you know, and because he was apparently very much into that. So I went to the library.
Pernilla, before you continue, could you just slightly put your mic up? I hear that it's, you know, you get some breathing noises.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect.
Let me know if that works. Yeah.
That's good, yes.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
So I went to the Danish library. That's where I lived. I tried to find a book. They didn't have it. I ordered it. And, you know, several weeks later, I got a notice they found it up in Norway, different country. Brought it back to the library. I picked it up. I started reading it. And it didn't do anything for me. I was like, you know, what? But because it came all the way from Norway, I thought, well, maybe I should make a Xerox copy of this book. So I did, returned the book, put it in my shelf, my Xerox copy, and I think 6 months later, something in me just wanted to read it. So I read it, and that's when I had this, you know, the big awakening. I was on my knees. It was a big thing that happened, and for a number of months, I think 2 or 3 months, I was just walking around as love. There was just love. It was, of course, blissful, divine, and beautiful. And well, then one day after I had been going to my dance class, I was sitting in a cafe drinking my latte and reading one of Joel's books, because by then I was very interested in his book. So I got hold of some more of them. And so I was reading there, having a wonderful time, you know, looking around, basically seeing God, love. It was just so beautiful. So then this man comes up to me from California, a black man. He says, you know, can you help me? I need directions. Can you show me where this is? So we talked a little bit, and he says, can I join you here? I said, sure. I put Joel's book away. I didn't want to advertise God. So we talked a little bit, and then he said, so what are you reading? And so I showed him the book, and then we started talking, and that's when everything started changing for me, because this man, he knew the Bible inside out. So we talked about God. It was very interesting. And
Mhm.
then at the end of the evening, I said, nice to talk to you. I'm going to go home now. And then
Mhm.
he says, I don't have a place to stay. Can I stay at your place? And I said, no, a total stranger. I just had this little apartment.
Mhm.
So I said no. And then he started probing in a way. I said, well, but it's not your home, or it's not your house. It's God's house. And, because I was in this state, in this openness, I knew that was true. There was no doubt about it. So I started
Mhm.
doubting the no that I felt, and and then he said more things, and I was confused, because when you're in that open
Mhm.
space, it's sometimes hard to interact in a normal way.
Mhm.
And so
Well,
anyway,
it's like the personality that used to be there somehow isn't quite functional in the same way, is it?
no, it wasn't. No, it it was confusing. Yeah, yeah, and it
Mhm.
was, the experience I'd had, the awakening was not embodied, was not integrated. It was, I was still in this state of not quite understanding what really was going on.
Mm.
So anyway, I didn't listen to the no. There was a big no inside, and I didn't listen to it. And that's kind of my downfall, I can see later. So
Mhm.
ended up saying yes. He came into my apartment, and I think 5 months later, I finally got rid of him, and it was the worst hell ride I'd ever been on. And I'm not going to get into this now. It was just, I really want to just emphasize how later I really saw that it was because I was not including my no in the allness, in the love, in the oneness. So that's
Can
where I
I
divided myself. Go ahead.
can I ask back about this, Pernilla? Because it's quite I think it's quite interesting, that question. Weren't you listening to your no or including your no? Or was it that you weren't including yourself, as a human being, as a being that's part of that
Yeah,
oneness? Weren't you including yourself in that, and
yeah,
your needs, your
yeah,
as you lived, as the yeah, just the needs that you had.
absolutely. And that's the bigger picture. I talk about the no because that is part of the expression as it expresses itself. You can't, it's all of it. It's my needs, it's my wants, it's my longings, it's my yes, my no. And the whole journey has been learning to uh, really listen to that. And that I think is very common, that a lot of people don't know how to do that because we didn't learn that when we grew up. So that's part of the personality that's still, the separate personality that still goes along for the ride, but in a separate way. It's not fully at one.
Mm,
So it took me many years to really understand it and bring it in and listen to that, and understanding that it's not separate. It's actually us who separate ourselves, from the whole
mm,
by doing these things. And if we can just include the word self-love, it's actually very unloving to do that, because we create duality. I create duality when I do that, right? There's the
yes.
fullness, and then there's me outside of it, and it's painful.
Mm,
So yeah, so that was the
mhm,
beginning, and the realization, embodiment, that it's taken many years. And I would say it's not done. It's an ongoing process to bring
mhm,
every single part that's been excluded back into that love, that oneness, that ocean of love.
mm,
And when we do, there is no duality. Things are just different. It's just very simple.
mhm,
So yeah, yeah,
mm,
yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story.
Mm.
Because I think especially for women, I don't
Yeah.
often bring up the theme of women and men and gender differences because
Mhm.
most of the time they don't seem relevant.
Mhm.
But in this respect, it does seem relevant. It
Mm.
does
Yeah.
seem to come in because the gender difference like creates two different ways of seeing, two different paths of conditioning, that approach the topic of love quite differently. Um,
Mm.
and my sense is that, maybe I'll just share something of my own
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
I did a workshop yesterday actually on the same topic of loving
Uh-huh.
ourselves
Yeah.
for cancer survivors, for people who are actually going through the experience of cancer
Mhm.
right now. We have a beautiful center in the west, just west of Montreal.
Mhm.
Um, it's one of my gifts to, yeah, to the world to do volunteering there. And so I did this workshop, and there were two women who had breast cancer, or were dealing with breast cancer,
Mm.
and they both had such trouble accepting the help that
Yeah.
for one woman it was her mother. She came in and she cleaned her house, and when women are on chemo, it's actually really hard to keep
Mhm.
going with those things. So and yet the woman kept saying, well, it shouldn't be like this. She shouldn't be doing this. She's older than me. I should be doing this for her. And so it was, I mean, this was self-love at a very, very, very practical level.
Yeah.
We're not talking very sophisticated here, but and the other woman had the same issue with her daughter coming in and doing all kinds of things for her.
Mhm.
And um, and the thing is, women are so used to nurturing and doing things for others that it's very hard to see ourselves as to even see ourselves and to even see that we have needs
Yeah.
that are also worth meeting and worth looking at and worth taken seriously,
Yeah.
at least as much as those of everybody else. And of
Yeah.
course, biologically and by society, women are conditioned to be there for everybody else
Mhm.
and not so much be there for ourselves.
Yeah. It goes deep, doesn't it? Goes deep into our psyche, into our, well, false identity, whatever we can call it. It goes very deep.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of consciousness and willingness and support to get out of such a deep identity. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
yeah. It's
yeah.
beautiful you're doing that, Grace. It's lovely.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was just such a timely, I learned so much in doing this. Even though I'm a cancer survivor myself, but
Oh,
every person's journey is so unique.
yeah.
And I feel like I'm on a very steep learning curve supporting others in their journeys.
Hmm.
And it was just so striking that those two women came up with just this one basic issue from two different generations, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was just, I mean, for me it was also just a pointer that that's what I needed to bring up today in our
Hmm.
conversation
Yeah,
because it's just so glaringly obvious that that women do have a different, it's like the learning is just so different for women than it is for men on that topic.
Yeah, on that topic, because I would say men have their own identity that goes so deep as the sea when they wake up, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there is a place where, you know, the divine, it kind of divides itself into these two genders in this experience, and each has their own, um, yeah, their own places to be free, to liberate themselves from. And I do think it's different, you know, to a certain extent it's different, and then there's so much that's the same, because a lot of, I mean, I do work mostly with women, but I work with men too, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really the same work. There's no difference in
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just a different flavor of identity, and of, I mean, for men it's kind of more egoic, and then for women it's more that, you know, undermining themselves. So in that there's a whole identity itself just coming together like that. I'm better than, you're worse than, or I know more, you know, I know less. And that in
Mm-hmm.
itself, that structure, you know, if we can separate that and then own each our own part of it,
Mm-hmm.
right, and liberate that. Because as
Yes.
long as we can't see it, we may have woken up to some things, maybe even many things.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that's not included, we're not free yet. So,
No.
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And you know what I keep realizing myself is that it's so beautiful to dwell in those, you know, in those very expansive states, very, you know, just like in the sweetness of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, you know, there is this human being that that has all that conditioning that's basically a survival conditioning. And you know, even after 10 years of therapy in the 90s, in my own case, and a lot of self growth and, you know, whatever healing that happened after,
Yeah.
I still find I'm still spotting ways that 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 flavor of love hasn't quite reached that bit
Yeah.
in me, or
Mhm.
that way of doing things, because that way of doing things is still more like just making sure I'm safe and I'm comfortable,
Yeah.
rather than, you know, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have that taste of loving,
Mhm.
gentle, kind, spontaneous doing. You know, that's it, that a doing has that arises really out of love. All
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And well, I think if we can, you know, if we can bring love to that we are not fully love yet, because that's again one of those traps, right? You know, I should be, I should know, and I have
Mm-hmm.
woken up, I've done on this world all this work, but that's not the point. The point
Mm-hmm.
is to bring love every time. I often use the metaphor of a flower. You know, a petal opens and the next and the next, and petal number five cannot open until one, two, three, and four have opened. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it is, we are like flowers opening up. It's an evolutionary process. I see very much life as an evolutionary process. I can just, I see it more, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
what petal is still closed, and, you know, can we bring a little love to that petal so it can just open, instead of saying, you know, you should be open and then go, "No," right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
that resisting ourselves, which I talk so much about also, is that it's the resistance
Mm-hmm.
that we have towards ourselves that keeps the petals closed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a fist, isn't it? It's like we
Mm-hmm.
walk around as, and I'm still, I can still see where a petal is not allowed to open up. It's, but I don't need to judge myself or resist that
Mm-hmm.
or make myself wrong for it. And in that, it, Yeah, because we're all in the same boat. There's nobody better or worse. And we all have maybe different petals that have opened, and can we support each other in opening petals? Then we can create a different world, which is something in my heart that I'm looking forward to, where we can just live in love. And well, that's your website, right? Live in love, and get into that divine flow that is who we are if we just allow ourselves to go with it and not keep resisting the movement that wants to come through. So it really is. It's this the fist of resisting and then going to allowing the petal to open. So allowing is a big part of what I show people how to do. I didn't learn that when I grew up. Did you? Right? It was.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, being German by origin, all I knew was what I should be doing and how I should be.
Yeah. 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 So it takes time. It just takes time. And let's be really loving and kind and patient with ourselves as we start embodying what we have realized that we are. It's so much more fun that way and then gentle, and it goes faster. It's the resistance that stops it, and it's feeling ashamed that, oh my God, I still do this or I still feel this, and then holding on. Well, it's yours, right? As long as we resist it, it's ours. But when we allow, it can be set free. So it's that resisting versus allowing that it seems to be something that wants to come through here as a message or as a sharing or something. And it's very simple, but it takes time. So yeah.
Yeah, Pernilla, I'm very in the moment here, and this just comes up to ask. I meant to ask you this beforehand, but I forgot. I was wondering, would you be open to doing something like a short guided meditation with us?
I'd love
If
to.
there is something that
Yeah.
that you do with people that can be done on the internet like this?
I'd love to. Would you like to do it now?
Yes, sure. Came
Okay.
up to ask now. Let's do it now.
Yeah. Well, for those of you listening here, and if this resonates with you, and you might already, when I talk about resisting, you might already think of something in your life where you are resisting, and it usually shows up as something you don't like. When we don't like something, we resist it. It's how we grew up. That's how we do it. So just take a moment right now and think of something in your life, whether it's external or internal, something that happened to you or something about yourself you don't like, you may feel ashamed of, you may feel bad about something. And these are wrong, feeling wrong and bad and ashamed. That's all the contraction. So, or if something, maybe somebody said something to you the other day, or you said something you didn't like. Just pick one right now and notice how you hold that, how you meet that. That's something that you don't want. Just feel inside of yourself. If it helps you, you can just close your eyes and just feel what is the impact of that in your body. Is there something that feels, is your breathing tight? Or do you notice a tightness in your belly or your shoulders or your jaws? So just feel into if there's anything about yourself, about your life that you're resisting. And then notice the impact of that in your body. And you might just take a moment and feel into where in your body do you notice that? And do you have some kind of an internal conversation about it with yourself, that where you're making yourself wrong or resisting something? So just notice whatever it is. Can be very small, very big. And then I want to invite you to just feel that in your body where that is, that resistance, right? It's like, I don't want that. You're saying no to it. And I'm all for no. As you know, I learned that in my own experience. But feel how you're resisting something and maybe not fully listening to that, what it really is. So wherever it is in your body, I want to invite you just to take a breath into that area. So just take a gentle, kind breath. Let's say it's in your belly or in your chest. So just take a breath in there. And instead of doing the usual go away, pushing it away, now I want to just try something new where you go in and with your breath, you just say hello to it. Just say hello. A friendly hello. As if you want to get to know that part. Instead of wanting to kick it out, get rid of it, now you go in with a different attitude where you actually allow it to be there so you can get to know it. What is it? And then when you create that space from that tight fist to an open hand, now you can listen. Now you can be open to receiving what it is that this tight fist does not want to experience. So breathe into that. Say hello if that helps you to connect with it. And just feel what happens. You might notice that something starts relaxing or moving. Just that little shift from trying to get rid of it to actually saying hello and allowing it to be there. That creates the space for this, whatever it is, your experience, because it's always our own experience. Even if it might be an external something that troubles you, it is really the internal experience that most of the time is what we're trying to get rid of. So feel what it is. And then now you can start opening your heart or the ear in your heart to listen. It's like, well, what is this trying to tell me? What is this feeling or experience trying to communicate with me? And then you just wait. You just listen. You let it come to you. And let's say there is anger. Something happened and you're angry. Well, maybe this anger has something that it wants to let you know about that is not right in your life. Maybe there's something where you're not being fully true to yourself, not being fully true to love, to something you know needs to happen. So, and that can make you angry. And I'm just using one example here. But whatever this anger or fear or sadness is trying to communicate, just listen to it right now. And notice what it's saying to you. And then, what would happen if you really honored that? what would happen if you really started listening to something much deeper in you than what your mind has been trying to tell you and contracted around? Now to me, this is dropping more into the body and into the heart, into the space where the wisdom resides. And just listen to that. There's a lot of wisdom here for most of us. And then just see if you started honoring that, what happens? Where are you not being true to yourself? Just like I wasn't true to myself when my body said no, and I overrode it with a yes, and it put me in a lot of problems. Here you have an opportunity to listen to the deeper yes or the deeper no. And I just want to invite you to notice what happens internally for you when you listen to something you normally try to resist. And take a deep breath into that. And just welcome whatever is coming. And really notice, because at this place here, this is where the grip, the holding of, we could say, the false identity can start relaxing. It's like you're melting that boundary between who you are and who you think you should be. When that starts dissolving, you will notice that you start dissolving more into the space of who you already are. By bringing love and honoring to what is true for you, you're bringing the love that you are, that is all there is. You simply bring love to an area that you were not loving before. I sometimes say that it's like bringing conscious love to an unconscious love. An unconscious love is where we have been denying ourselves love. So we've been holding ourselves outside of this love that is everywhere. So you can bring love to an area that you were not loving before, and with that you will notice that you just start dissolving more and more into the oneness, into the love that is all around you, all around us. And feel free to soak in that a little longer if you want to, and Grace, whenever you can take as much time as you want to, and when you naturally feel moved to take the next step in our conversation here, you can just move from that place. But all of you who are listening here, this is a very simple way of connecting with the love that you are, by just helping dissolve all the places where you have excluded yourself from this love. And it's so simple in a way, because you are love. I am love. If I consciously apply what I am instead of turning away from it, you realize that there is only love, and that will deepen over time. So you don't need any fancy spiritual text or something, and by all means enjoy every one of them if that's what you love to do. But the simplicity is always here with us when we learn to help dissolve the barriers that we are the ones who put in between who we are and who we think we should be, right? That's the barrier. So just bringing love to that barrier, listen to it, breathe into it. You'll notice a deep breath can happen, and you go like, and you feel it. It's like it's here. It's nowhere else. It's nowhere. And as long as we have these barriers, right? We think that the love is outside there, and we go out and we look for a loving relationship, or we look for love, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's beautiful to share the love with anyone. But if we come from a place of lack, that we don't have it, that we aren't it, we go out into the world looking for something that we deny ourselves, right? And it's almost like we tear a piece out of ourselves and put it away. But then we feel not whole inside. And when we don't feel whole inside, we can't help but going out and look for that wholeness, because we are whole. And if we don't feel whole, we have to, we're driven to go find the wholeness. That's why we are on these spiritual searches, because something in us knows that we're whole, but when we don't experience it and when we don't feel it, we're driven to find it. And that's why we go out in the world looking for it, because we're not bringing that piece that we've, pushed away. That's the one we need to bring back in here. And then we're whole. And then the beauty is you walk out into the world whole. You don't walk out there looking for something, or you don't walk out into the world to change something because it's lacking. You walk into the world whole. You walk into the world being the solution for what you think is a problem out there, because you bring the wholeness. And that's the only thing that I see is missing in the world, that we don't bring our fullness, the fullness of love, the wholeness of who we are. And when we do that, people can feel that, and then they can relax, and then they can get in touch with their own wholeness, and then they can do the same, right? So by being who we are, we do change the world. And for some of us, there might be a bigger message, a bigger vision to do something. For some people, it may not be. They may just be with their family and bring the love in that way. But the more you allow yourself to feel what it is that's moving in you, instead of resisting it or denying it, you also know what to do. You'll know what to do and what not to do. It just is there. It's all here. Yeah, I see you're nodding, Grace. I know you know that, and it's so lovely to share that, because it's, even talking about it, it just helps me again to steep in it deeper and feel the sweetness of it and the softness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Pernilla. It's what you're saying is so true. It's like somehow whatever we read in a book, it's an idea, it's a concept, and it has to become real. And I find that doing a guided exercise or meditation, that really takes us from the rational mind, the mind that's that's listening or that's interacting, and that takes in what's being said, and that of course will disagree also, with some of what's said. I mean, it will take issue. It's so important to move from that mind, which which cannot be love, because I mean, yes, it is love, but in a very specific way, in a way that doesn't kind of experience the flavor of love in a way that the 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 felt. I mean, you talk a lot about the felt sense, um, and there's a felt sense of love that cannot be experienced in the mind. It can only be experienced in a I hesitate sometimes to say at a physical level, because my sense is it's not really physical, but it is felt. It's experience, and that's where it becomes very real, and that's what we need to steep in somehow. That's what will make the love and the oneness a reality rather than a thought. So that's why I like inviting people also to do these exercises with us, because it really helps to bring us into that experience rather than just to be in the thought.
Yeah, that's really where it's all about. It's when it's conceptual, it can get very rigid and actually very unkind many times. And I can't really I don't know what to do with that, And there's always the invitation to go in the body, and even though it's not really physical, but it is experienced in the body. And as long as we have a body, why not make use of what the body is actually capable of, is to receive the experience of that so we can fully live it. And I feel more like the body is an outlet, or can be an open vessel for that, because we feel it. And as soon as I feel it, I know others feel it too. It kind of radiates out.
Yes.
And in that, you don't even have to say a whole lot. It's just people just feel it and are touched by that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my way of understanding it would be to say it's at the level of a more subtle energy than a physical energy, because we don't have a sense that experiences love, right?
Exactly.
We have a visual sense, we have our ears, we have touch, but the experience of love doesn't come through any of the senses.
Exactly, and it's that
experienced. So it's more subtle than any of the senses, and yet it's very real, and yes, it does transmit itself. I mean, that's why being with teachers or enlightened beings who are really so steeped in that they transmit it, they emit it so fully, it's very helpful to start with, because it gives us a taste, it gives us a kind of an experience of that flavor, of that sweetness.
Yeah. It may be what they call the sixth sense, right? Because we are so focused on the 5 physical senses, but maybe that is what the sixth sense they talk about. That is that, and even though yes, there are teachers who transmit that, but I think we all do, don't you? When we just rest in that, we do. Every action, every word, it's all transmitted. So maybe some are stronger than others, but I want us to own that we are that, and start living it, so we can be the change in the world, and not keep thinking that somebody else has the answer, because this is it. We are it when we allow ourselves to really be it, become it, rest in it, and then we can still enjoy, if there's stronger transmissions to help dissolve some of the barriers where we're still not fully embodied. So it's for me, it's all one big ball of love, supporting each other, so we can live in that oneness, which so many are really, that's what's given now, that we can live that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have a strong feeling you bring that in your work and your being too, Grace, by doing what you do here. Working with the women with cancer, senior clients. Don't you feel that just your beingness is actually more sometimes than what you say and do?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was speaking about transmission, I didn't mean a kind of like a doing of transmission,
Right,
I
right.
just meant, well, it communicates itself,
Yes.
and yes, my experience is that when I work with people, this does transmit itself. And it's also good to name it sometimes, because that people need to realize that if they can feel it in themselves, if they can experience it as coming from me, it's because it's right there already.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like they couldn't even recognize it if they didn't know it themselves.
Exactly.
But it at some point in the personal and spiritual evolution, we do see it more clearly in others, and that's totally okay. That's how we come to integrate it more ourselves. I mean, for me, that's not a problem. I just see that's part of how we give to each other. That's part of love, kind of spreading.
And what a blessing that we've had all these teachers who could point us in that direction, right? I wouldn't have, I mean, without Joel Goldsmith's book, I wouldn't have had that blast, that opened up something in me. And then, I've been with Adia and very long. There's been many teachers, and my goodness, I bow to each one of them, because without them, I would not have be who I am today. And there's times where you find that inspiration in somebody, and it could be right here in the conversation with you. But something is sparked, right, to open up more. And if we know how to listen to that and allow it, that is, I don't know. It just lights me up.
I can see that happening.
But it's
when you're very alive with it.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is, and I can feel that, because when I talk about this, I feel my whole being is talking, and it to find, how shall I say that, to find what we come here to be/do. I think that's such a gift, because then there is a resonance and an inspiration and a passion, and until we find that, until we stumble upon it or whatever, there's kind of an outside trying to find that, right? Again, it's finding that alignment, not just in realizing, oh, I am that, but how it wants to move in alignment with itself as you and as me. And that has been part of my search now, actually, for the last few years, with learning, marketing, and that whole process has forced me to, like, and I kept like, no, that's too big, that's too scary, It's like, and now I feel, when I'm talking about this every time on my radio show, and I just like, this is who I am. I'm not even doing anything. It's the same. That's where I'm the happiest. Yeah, it's just there's no division. Yeah. And it's not like this all the time. It's not like I need to talk about this, but I do need to know somehow rest in that in everything I do,
Mhm.
and not try and go out and do something separate from this. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my own practice right now, to really fully own that this is it. This is who I am slash do. Same thing. And
Mhm.
to me, that's very enlivening. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, it's part of realizing that really nothing is excluded, you
Hmm.
know. It's
Hmm.
all it's how it's how love becomes very practical, you know. It's
Yes.
very real, and
Yeah.
it's like, you know, there's different ways of putting it. I like the metaphor of of everything starting to be steeped in that sweetness, in that flavor of love.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's transformed by it and it starts moving as that. And so,
Yeah.
you know, in the end, there's nothing left but that.
Hmm. Right.
And
Yeah.
that's just so beautiful, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And
When
what
we
I love right now, Grace, I can feel how it just also shines as you. I
Mhm,
just,
mhm,
when we talk about this love with such I don't know, passion or aliveness, it just feeds us, right? It
mhm.
feeds us. And
Yes.
do we dare have conversations like this? Because most people are afraid of this kind of
Yeah.
intimacy and
Mhm,
vulnerability, and it's like really showing your most inner to the
mhm,
world, and we're
mhm,
used to being slapped for it, right? So it's kind of again breaking through the walls, and being with people, being with therapists or teachers or coaches or friends or communities where that is quote unquote allowed now, right? We don't have to
mhm,
hide our love anymore. And I
mhm,
know that I tried to hide it for years. I was afraid to show it. So I
mhm,
became, a little more hard, but now
mhm,
more and more, it's like, no, I want to be this softness, because this is the
mhm.
truth of who I am and everybody is. And
Yes.
again, can we live that in the world and give others permission to be
Mhm,
that too? Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, it's just sweet. But I love our little,
Yeah.
what we share here, not just the words. Very
Yeah.
tangible. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's interesting you're saying this because as I was doing this workshop yesterday, one of the women was quite, you know, really quite caught in survival and quite harsh with herself and harsh with her judgments and, you know, shoulds everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And I could just feel how, of course, that there was a judgment of me too. You know, it's like, ah, what's she talking about? Why is she like this? You know, and it kind of dissolved with time, and I did a chant at the end, and you know, I did that for the first time. I did a chant with a harmonium, um,
Oh, nice.
and you know, just as a kind of guided meditation. And at the end, you know, something had softened in her,
Mm.
something, and she said, "Oh, that really, you know, was touching something in her
Mm.
that was good for her." And
Yeah.
so it's just like beautiful also to see how something had changed from a, you know, kind of quite harsh
Hmm.
judgmental place to start with. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and really, it's so funny because even in that context, it took some courage to actually just sit down and, you know, play my harmonium and do some chanting
Hmm. Yeah.
because, you know, that's what you do in spiritual contexts, but not necessarily in that kind of context, you know,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of kind of, um, it's more personality based. So, you know, people will at first will just look a bit funny if you bring out your
Hmm.
harmonium.
Well,
But
it's
I was
part of the
very glad I
tradition.
had
Oh,
done it.
I bet. Yeah, and it really did the work. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you know, it's kind of it's part of that the evolutionary process again where when you bring some of that into an area where that's totally foreign and there's a rigidity,
Mhm.
you know, I have a lot of compassion for myself when I bring
Mhm.
that to a whole new frontier. Because there is going to be a lot of resistance and there is going to be, you know,
Mhm.
wrong making or judging me or you know, it's going to be there. So can we also be really loving to ourselves? And it's okay that it's scary because we
Mhm.
know that these are not open like in spiritual circles.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
you know, I teach meditation and mindfulness at the university here in Santa Cruz.
Mhm.
And, but Santa Cruz is very open
Mhm.
and that makes it easier. But it certainly took some also to do it the way I do because it's all about self-love. That is
Mhm.
my thing
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
And but the more I do it, the more you do that, you'll be more comfortable. And but we do bring that energy to the barriers, right? We
Yes.
help dissolve that old paradigm energy by
Mhm.
bringing the new that we are now into that. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's I find it challenging sometimes, and I'm like,
Mhm.
you know, can I say that here? You know, and yeah, and that's okay. Yeah, I
Yes.
don't think we need to be super women anymore. We can just really honor where we're at and say, yeah, it's a little scary.
Mhm.
And I would ask my friends, you know, support me in this or hold me, you know. So I
Mhm.
feel I'm not alone as I walk into something
Mhm.
on my own. You
Mhm.
know, it's that's the self-love, the
Mhm.
self-care. Can we ask for support? Can we
Mhm.
do whatever it takes so that this energy can move into the world all
Mhm.
the time?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why we have each other. There are so many who do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's beautiful to, talk about this with you because I mean clearly we both have that,
Yeah.
that calling. I mean love
Yeah.
just calls us to be spoken through us.
Yeah.
And one thing also that I've come to trust over time is that love is just more real than any judgment.
Yeah.
It just has that, it's true,
Hmm.
and judgment is
Hmm.
not as true.
Hmm.
Harshness is not as true.
Yeah.
And so, people may hold out for a while, in
Hmm.
their judgments or their kind of fighting energy.
Yeah.
But usually it just doesn't take so long because there's just something about the reality of love. It's so direct. It's so it's so true that it cannot be resisted for all that long. That's my experience.
I tried for a long time. Eventually, love wins.
Ah.
Yeah. You know, I want to share because you talked about these women, they were, you know, the should.
Mhm,
I went through something some years ago and I saw how I was really living under this should, I call it the should regime.
mhm,
And then one day when I was out running, I run out here in the redwoods. I live in Paradise, by the way. And then
mhm.
I got this whole download about shoulds, and so I created a program called, in those days it was called the 40-day should free mind cleanse. And yeah, and it was so powerful because it was my own process where I
Mhm,
kept like, oh, I should feel bad. It's like, really? I should feel bad. I was really questioning these
mhm,
shoulds.
mhm.
And what it did was to really move from that should regime, the mind, how we think we should be, you know,
Mhm,
even if we, especially when people wake up, then there's
mhm.
like, oh, now I'm awake, now I should, you know. And it's like, no,
Yes.
that all
Mhm,
needs to go too. And so by
mhm,
recognizing the shoulds and starting to fall into the heart and start feeling loved. That
mhm,
is the because so. the program was about really recognizing the shoulds, and then instead of believing them, start listening to what is really the movement here.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can start feeling loved,
Mm-hmm.
feeling loved, that's when again a lot of these barriers start melting away.
Mm-hmm.
But most of us, even if we were loved as a child, we didn't feel it because our parents, I don't doubt they loved us, but the way they loved us was not the way we needed to be loved to feel it. So it's the feeling that most of us have been missing of what it actually feels like to feel loved, to be loved, and
Mm-hmm.
at a core. So that's why it's a process to go from trying to be different to really go like, oh, what makes me really feel loved? Because when I feel loved, again, I am in the ocean of the oneness. And can we as women, can
Mm-hmm.
we allow ourselves to feel loved even without doing a thing? Ooh, that's challenging. The worthiness, all that stuff. It's just layers upon layers. And no matter how beautifully we wake up, I don't think we can avoid that. It at some point,
Mm-hmm.
it all needs to be brought back in,
Yes,
and
totally.
then feeling loved. And I'm not feeling loved all the time, but I'm feeling loved more and more. And it feels good. It
Mm-hmm.
helps me just flow. That helps me be in the divine flow, which is
Mm-hmm.
were so beautiful. Yeah. So anyway, that was about the should, oh, we live by shoulds. Yikes. They're hard.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're tough. They're tough.
Yeah.
So, Pernilla, I'm very aware that we've gone past the hour, and
Okay.
take a little time to look at the comments and whether
Yeah.
anybody wants to come on to the hangout,
Sure.
if that's okay by you.
Would
And
love it.
just rest for a while and close your eyes and rest the eyes, and I'll look at the comments. Yeah, so let's see. Hmm. So Jana Rovsky says, can Pernilla speak more about how, after not listening to the no, she was able to unite the parts of herself that were excluded?
That's a great question, and I can tell you it did not happen overnight. It really took me a long time because it was so deeply traumatic what I went through for 5 months. And so it took a while to kind of find myself in that, and then I could start looking at like what happened. There was still such a belief that others knew better than I did. So I it's been just a slow process, and I didn't really know how to do. I didn't even know that that was it at the beginning. So a lot of it was just starting to find myself and still get lost in certain things because these identities, they go deep and we've lived them for eons. But in the process, I just little by little, and I I really think that when I started learning the Hakomi method, which I'm a certified Hakomi practitioner now, that was a long process of learning, and that's all about embodiment. That's all about bringing all parts, include all parts. And then I started, at that same time, I also started going to see Adyashanti, a non-dual teacher here in this area. I was very blessed to have both at the same time because some people who just do the non-dual, they can get lost and they do the spiritual bypass, which I've seen a lot of people do. Because I was in a Hakomi training, I couldn't do that. So I would say the two really helped me. I think Hakomi is such beautiful work of embodiment that it's probably one of the things that really helped me to listen to myself. And it wasn't until I started seeing a Hakomi practitioner that I understood how I was not listening to myself. So to answer your question, how I did it, it was actually with the help of somebody who could guide me into listening to myself. I had no clue. You know, I had woken up to a certain extent. I wasn't bypassing, but there was a piece missing for me to bring them together. And then over time, then I started realizing, oh, now I see what happened. So it really took a while, took years. That's when I started reading or writing my book called Imagine Being Kind to Yourself, because that's when I really started getting what had happened and how I saw so many people in the spiritual communities doing the bypass. You know, they would come and say, oh, but I should just accept what is. But they didn't accept what is inside, right? So it was through my own process that I learned to bring all of it in there. And it was really with the help from a Hakomi practitioner in those days. And it was extremely helpful. Being in the Hakomi training was very intense. Being with the people in the community, a lot of them are still my very closest friends because we you know, you go to such deep places together. And so, yeah, it was a long process, and it's been worth every single step, but it wasn't always easy. I don't want to say that, but I want to say that what I've learned from that is, like, I wrote a book about it, and I created this, what we just went through in a meditation called, I called it the ALL formula. The ALL stands for allow, listen, and love. So when you have some steps to go by and break it down, it's much easier, I would say. It's not totally easy still. We have places inside that are very painful, that are very scared, they're very angry, right? And to meet them all without resistance, it takes a little time, but it can be done. And I'm so grateful for everything I've gone through, because it just allowed me to be who I am today, and it's an ongoing process. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Pernilla. And actually, Jana just said she feels that her question was answered.
Oh, okay.
But actually, I think you added something that was worth adding. And you know, myself, I just want to come back to this because it feels so important. You know, a point to make, which is that the mind can kind of hijack love and turn it into a should. You know, just as it did for you by talking to this man.
Yeah.
You know, that there was the kind of felt sense of just knowing that that wasn't a good idea to let this man come to your house.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like his arguing with you, reasoning with you, got you into the mind that then started spinning a story about what love meant.
Yes.
You know? And what love means is never what our minds say it means. You know, I mean, that is so important to realize. What love means is always a sense in the moment of what is gentle, what is soft. And sometimes it can be also just very clear. There can be a clear no. The no is not a harsh no. It arises out of a softness. You know, it arises out of a gentle recognition that this doesn't feel good. So it's a no. And it can be very clear. And it can even be sometimes angry, you know. But the anger arises out of a clarity that itself arises out of love. You know, that's how I would describe it. And that's what I've learned somehow, in my own journey. That when my mind comes up with some idea of what love means, it's like, that stinks. That is so suspicious.
Well, when you hear the word shoot in there, when you recognize shoot, I would
Yes.
be suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you say that, Grace. It's really, really important how the mind can just try and twist it and make it
Mhm.
spiritual or something. It's
Yes.
so cunning and tricky, and
Mhm.
if you don't have that felt sense inside, you may not recognize it. So it's
Yes.
very important you say that, and it's
Yeah.
subtle, but once you live that love and bring yourself in, I would
Mhm.
say a no. I say no so often, and I don't have to argue or defend
Mhm.
around them. And that was such a relief. It's like, oh, no. It's just like, no, I don't do that anymore. That's how
Mhm.
simple it is now. Where
Mhm.
before it's like, no, because, there was all this
Mhm.
energy behind it because I was not behind it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so it's very true. But you catch that? Ooh,
Mhm.
yeah, you got to be very perceptive.
And it gets more and more subtle, like as time
Mhm.
goes on, and as love kind of, embodies more in our lives, the ways that the mind hijacks it or
Yeah.
twists it get more and more subtle, but having spotted it in a less subtle way, it becomes easier to also spot it in a more subtle way.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So just going back to the comments, Jana says that was, oops, I just lost it. Okay, that window. Jana says that was wonderful, so helpful, blessings, she says. And Mullet 3000 says, I'm in the middle of reading Joel Goldsmith's The Art of Spiritual Healing.
Oh, yay!
Can Pernilla give any guidance and pointers for doing healing?
Let me just see. Of course, I can only speak in my own experience. And Joel Goldsmith has been a huge, huge influence. It still overshadows who I am in a way. That was the beginning, and he was a spiritual healer. Um, it's learning to say no to a lot of things that we know are not true or not true anymore. Now, this could be a really big subject, but such a thing as disease in Joel's teachings, there's no power. They have no power. And that's why he says disease doesn't exist. Now, I don't want to say that myself because I haven't realized that. However, it is something that embodies itself in me over time more and more, where when something shows up, I can just not give it any energy. But what you can do is you can say no to it and say, no, I do not want to engage in that. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to argue with it or whatever. And then you go inside and you ask, I say, okay, show me what is truth. What is true here? Not about the disease. There is no truth in disease. And again, I'm not speaking fully my own language here. I'm using Joel right now because I wouldn't call myself. I'm not a Joel, I'm a Pernilla, and I have my own expression of that. But it is a big part of me where I
I love
just.
the way you say that. Sorry, I just had to
Oh, okay.
throw that in. I'm a Pernilla and
Yeah,
I'm a Grace, and
yeah.
we all just are who we are. That's part of love.
Exactly. Yeah. And yet we can be very influenced and inspired by teachers. And I am.
Yes.
Joel is part of my being in that way. But so be still and listen. Again, don't resist the disease, whether it's yours or somebody else's, but learn to distance yourself from it and know that this is not who you are or this is not who they are. And then I go in and say, well, show me what is true. I know this is you. I know this is the divine. I know this is love, whatever it is. Show me the truth of that because I cannot see it right now. So and that's what I always loved with Joel. You know, he didn't do the bypass. He just didn't buy it, and he would just go inside and ask, well, show me what is truth. And then there have been times where I have seen things shift, and then there's times where I have not seen things shift. And that's, you know, that's where I'm at, but it's still part of who I am because that's what changed my whole life, was that teaching. So just go inside and wait, let it reveal itself. You might get an hint of, so you might get you know, an inspiration, an idea, a truth, something that you know that is more true than the disease, and just allow that. It's all about allowing that you are to start revealing and communicating itself to us what is the truth. But we have to learn to say no to what we know is not true, what we know we don't want. I think we are in a place now in this new energy, this new paradigm that we're stepping into, where we can leave the old behind. And what we have been doing in the past is resist it and try and get rid of it. And you know, when you try and get rid of something, you put all your energy into it and you keep it alive that way. But when you do a clean cut and say no, and then you don't engage with it anymore, and that's not so easy because we're used to the old. So again, it's a practice that we get better at. It's like, no, I don't do that. But then I go to like, well, what is true? I know that's not true, and I'm not going to engage in it anymore. I'm not going to give my energy to that. I'm going to give my energy to here. Show me. So there is a devotional and a receptive aspect to receiving, like, show me what is true here. And sometimes you might get something right away, and sometimes it takes time. I don't know. I don't have these answers. I just do my best. But it's beautiful to start living in that. And I actually did a radio show a while ago, talking about the difference between resisting and saying no. And I think it's so important because it's day and night. So just learning, and that's what Joel was about. He just like, don't even give it anything. Don't feed it. Boom, nothing. Show me what's true. So if you need permission, here's a sword, you know, and just say no and cut through. But then listen. It's like, okay, what is true? So that's the best I can say about that right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Pernilla. And maybe I'll just add, because healing is one of my big topics, one of my, you know, one of my callings. Would it be okay to add something about that topic?
I would love it. Yeah.
Okay. I just say to you, you know, healing is not something you do. Healing is something that happens. And what you can do, I don't know Joel Goldsmith's work and writings and teachings. So I don't know whether, you know, I just hear them through you, Pernilla. I don't know whether I'm totally aligned with this, but what I hear is kind of similar. Healing happens, and the energy of love, which is what is true, is actually very powerful in being able to shift things around. You know, energetically, you can understand that as a harmonization of what is at a place where it's gone very disharmonious and where it no longer flows. with life as it expresses naturally, and it got stuck. So when we want to be in a healing way with others, that's how I would put it. It takes a lot of humility, yes, because we cannot heal, you know. We can be the conduit for healing to happen with our intention and with our sincere alignment with love, alignment with truth. So in that sense, you know, I can see what you say about Joel Goldsmith's teachings is kind of exactly how I understand it too, Pernilla.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you'd like to, you can go to the website of the first online retreat that I did last year, which is called healingandawakening.com. And the theme was healing and awakening. And there's a video there that of a session that I did myself that is about healing and love as the force that is the healing force. So you might find that interesting to listen to. But you know, really the important, my sense is what keeps coming is that love is not, healing is not something we do. Love is not something we do. It's what we are. And you know, the idea that you can do it is part of the separate personality that wants to do things. So find the place in you that knows love and that knows healing, and allow that to do whatever it will do through you. You know, there may be things you do physically, there may be, you know, laying on of hands, there may be healing modalities that you already do, that healing comes through. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything, but it's not you who's doing it. I guess that's the point I was really wanting to make. Do you want to add anything to that, Pernilla?
Well, I totally agree with what you say. It's more like healing. We are whole, you know. We are whole if we would just allow ourselves to be the flow that we already are. There is no disease in that. It's like it's the boulders that we put in the way from this to normally flow. So that's, you know, when I shared about what Joel says, that, I mean, my own experiences is certainly also to, you know, change the diet and you know, listen to the body, what is, because a lot of healing happens when people stop eating certain things, right? So that's one thing that will come when you listen to your body. Then the other one, big one, is the places that we don't love in ourselves. Those are the ones that are, if you see, you know, life as a garden hose where water pours out, we have so many kinks in there. That's what's the disease. But can we open it by allowing ourselves, by loving everything that we already are? Because so then healing will be a natural unfolding of that.
Yes.
So there are many ways to approach it. There can be some belief structures that we don't know about that need to be seen, maybe with the help of somebody. And again, there's no one way, but everything you said, Grace, absolutely. And then whatever you feel yourself, because I think, you know, you may already know something inside of you that you may not have listened to. I don't know that, but it's always allowing that divine flow to fill up everything and not getting in its way. Then you'll go like healing, what, because it doesn't even exist in that realm. There is no healing and disease, right? The same with self-love. The only reason we talk about self-love is because we have been practicing not self-love, right? It's that duality. And if we stop if we bring self-love to not self-love, they cancel each other out. And it doesn't make sense anymore, right? Have you had that
Mm.
where you've done things in your life and you look back and you're like, what was that? It doesn't make sense
Mhm.
because you don't get in your way anymore. And it's just, there's just, and that's, I think a lot of that is happening in the world where so many things we've bought into, we realize they were never true.
Mm.
And this disease is one of them. It's just true in our mind and in our resisting who we are, being separate from the whole. And the beauty is that that's changing.
Mm.
That's why we have conversations like this. So, yeah, it's all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Pernilla. So,
Thank you.
mm, so
Yeah.
we need to come to an end. Um, so I just want to thank you, Pernilla, for coming and talking to me and to us about self-love, even as we come to a place where it no longer makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yes, absolutely. And I just want to mention that if you'd like to contact Pernilla, her website is lillarose.com, LILLAROSE.com. And Pernilla, if you'd like to add anything else that you want people to know about what you do, you're welcome to do that.
Mm, okay. Thank you. Well, first I want to say thank you, Grace. I love these conversations. So I really am
Mm.
very thankful that we have had a chance to share this, and all of you who have been listening or will listen in the future. I am so grateful you're here. Yeah, feel free to go to my website. I actually changed the name, so if it comes up differently than lillarose.com, it's actually Divine Feminine Flow now.com. That's one of the places where I was afraid to step into. And and you can just browse around. You know, my radio show is every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I always talk about how to get unveiled because most of us are so stuck in the veil. We can talk about what it's like outside of the veil, but what steps can we take to leave the veil behind? So, love you to join me there, and you can look around. I have the program I mentioned, the 40-day should-free mind cleanse. It's called what's it called? Trusting Yourself Without a Doubt, and that's available on my website. My book, there's the free book download. There's some really cheap little books, $1, just small little books that I wrote, and the big one, Imagine Being Kind to Yourself. So there's a lot of support and help if you want to look around, and of course you're always welcome to contact me if you want to work more privately with me. But you know, there's something for everyone. There's from freebies to, you know, all the way, whatever your needs are. And all I really want to say is just do your best to not resist who you are and allow every little part just to, it's like that little petal, just let it open up and see what happens. You know, you might really like who you are when you stop resisting, if that is something you have been doing. So it's been wonderful to be here with you, and thank you for the questions too. Yeah.
Thank you, Pernilla, and actually Mullet says thank you too, sends
Oh.
you a loving heart. Yeah, thank you to all of you for listening. And I just want to say the next live conversation will be this coming Sunday with Brian Piergrosi. So we're getting into a much younger generation there, and see what his contribution is. The topic is on true intimacy, so I think it follows on quite well from the topic of self-love. And yeah, I just want you to know that you find a lot more information about my online activities on the website www.living-from-love.com. And if you feel so moved, please also contribute to this gift to the world by making a donation. I'd love to be supported in this also in some way. So if you feel called to do that, please do so. And thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.